Hey everybody, welcome. Hope you're having a good week. So today we're going into the realm of page layouts, data hierarchy, and just where the heck do we put things on the page when we're building out our reports. So I am using a little sample here. This is from the Excel style guide. This is something I'm going to be offering organizations where they can send me their color palette, any of their brand information, their logos, and automatically build out a big thing of documentation for them. I'm really excited for this. I've used the NHS as an example here just because they have publicly available style guidelines, so it's an easy place to start. First things first, when you're thinking about what you put on the page, you need to start with insights, a narrative. You have to have done some analysis already, and you have to know what you want to tell your audience. You can do this verbally. You can write it on the back of a napkin. It doesn't matter, but you do have to have an idea of what you're trying to say. Where we start is the top of the page, and then we work our way down. Top of the page, put your logo in there. If you have a logo, put the title of the page in there. Really high level contextual stuff, like maybe you need to put the quarter up there, or just the date, or maybe you need to put which department it applies to. That kind of stuff goes up top. This upper left section of the page is really prime real estate. It's the first place our eye goes for the most part when we look at a report. Top left, and then we work our way left to right, top to bottom in general. This is where you're going to put either really important stuff that somebody has to read or has to see before getting into the rest of the report. So like important disclaimers, important context, that sort of thing. Or if you don't have that, it's where you're going to put your most important metric. You know, if you've got one important North Star metric, this is where it's going to go. People are going to go one of two places next. They're either going to go right over here to the right, or they're just going to go somewhere wherever there's the biggest, brightest element on the page. If you don't have a big, giant, bright element, this is the second most important area here. And this is where you're either going to start putting that top level info, the simplest, most impactful and insightful metric you have, and a chart that supports it, or it might be where you are giving some supplementary explanation of whatever you put over here in this top left section. Now, as we work our way down, the simplest way to think about this is granularity. So at the very bottom of our page is going to be where we put our like tables and tables of data. That's the most granular level. Up at the top, we put our single North Star metric. That's the least granular. In between, you're going to put things like supplemental visuals, summary metrics. If you have to break things into categories and give a separate chart for each category, this is where you put it. This might also be where you put something like your data inputs. If you're using a model here and people have to enter in some of their own data to update it, this is where they might do it, is in this section. How you structure this, everything in this kind of middle area, isn't really clearly defined. But it's just to say that the simplest overview insights going higher and the more complex, deeper insights going lower. And if you do that, it's going to work out okay. And then if you do need to show tables, and I don't suggest you always show all of your tables, but if you do need to show them, they would go pretty much at the bottom here, lowest down on the page, because they're the most granular data that you have. If people are interested, I will send out a little set of guidelines on how to structure these tables later. That all sounds great, but in practice, it can be a little confusing. How do I choose the sections? How do I style it? How do I do all that? So I just gave some little fun examples here. These are just showing, hey, you can add your brand color in the background and then make separate little segments using slightly darker colored shapes and then group your data together into those sections. There's nothing really fancy or crazy here, but it just gives you some general examples of different ways you might lay a page out. Last but not least, some of you may recognize this. I've given a card layout sample. This is one of the earliest templates we sent out. And what it does is it essentially just says, hey, if you're going to be putting data on a page, if you've got a metric you want to show, how do you structure it and what supplemental information do you give? And the concept here is pretty straightforward. Metric name, simple explanation, any contextual info, like if you have a goal you're trying to hit or a target or something somebody needs to know before they see everything else. You're going to follow that up with the metric itself, usually some kind of comparison to either a target or to the same time last year. You can give a breakdown if it needs to be broken into important categories and then show it over time. I explain all of that here. Read through it. It's quite helpful. But the big takeaway that I think everyone needs to know is this idea of anticipating the question. The most important skill that you're going to develop when you're trying to communicate with your data is this ability to anticipate the question. You need to know your audience and you need to think about, hey, when I show them this report, when I show them this data, when I show them this metric, what is the first thing they're going to ask me? What is the first question they're going to have? And if you can think of what that question is, or you have a good sense of what that question is, that will guide what data you need to add to make the report more useful. If I know the first thing somebody's going to ask, if I show them revenue for the current month is, well, how does that compare to the previous 12 months? then I show them the previous 12 months. Or how does that compare against targets we had for the previous 12 months? Then I'll show them how it compares against the targets we had for the previous 12 months. This skill is something that takes a little time to develop. It takes a little bit of practice, but you absolutely can develop it. And the most important thing you can do is get to know your audience. Talk to people, understand the questions they have, what they care about, how they do their job, and you will get there. That's what we've got this week. If you have any questions, let me know. This is going out Tuesday. If you are new to the newsletter, you might not be getting it yet because this kind of comes after the initial tutorial sequence. But for all the folks on there, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. Bye for now.